What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? I am your host, Shannon Smith, and welcome to another episode of the Successes Within Reach podcast. This is episode 3, Leadership, Management, and Communication. I'm super excited this evening as we have two dynamic guests with us. First up, I want to introduce Miss Aisha Thomas. There she is. She helps corporate and business leaders improve awareness, performance, communication, and diverse talent management. She's also an author of two phenomenal books. Miss Thomas, how you doing this evening?
Hey, I'm so excited.
All right, and our next guest is Mr. Corey. Is it Sigue or Sigue?
Sigue.
Sigue, there we go. All right. And he's an uplifter, a servant to the people, an elevator for others, and someone who needs not bear a title. This man knows leadership and management like the back of his hand. Sir, how you doing this evening?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. How y'all out there?
All right, all right. Let me switch our background up a little bit here. All right, just want to remind everybody you can join in the conversation and submit your questions at www.facebook.com/SIWR podcast. Without further ado, let's get into it. Question one is: what are the differences between a leader, a manager, and a supervisor? We'll start with Miss Thomas.
To be honest, there's not really much difference with each one of those individuals. Because essentially we're all in the work of serving the people, right? We were talking earlier about the importance of understanding our client and our customer. So of course we have the organization, right? The organization hired us, they put us on the job. And then you also have maybe your supervisor, your CEO, or whoever you report to. And then you have the team that you're over. So you're supervising them, you're managing them, you're leading them, because leadership is in each one of those roles. So again, you have your team of individuals. So it is still going to be a level of management in regards to understanding how to engage that team, how to support that team, how to lead that team effectively so you can get to the big picture. So you might have your individual goal within the team that you have. You might have the goal that you have that you want your supervisor, your direct supervisor that you want to reach for your supervisor. And then you have the organizational goal. So you have those 3 levels of clientele, but they all are levels of leadership. And yes, they might vary. There are different tiers of leadership. There's different tiers of management, but each one of those individuals are a leader. They just might have different roles and responsibilities depending on the organization that they work for. But I want us to recognize that regardless of what role you're in, supervisor, manager, whatever they want to call you, front line, back line, up line, you are still a leader and you're still there to serve. Typically, again, you have the client, you have the customer, that's your team, you have the organizational goals, and then you have the goal that you want to reach for that supervisor you report to. So each one of those are your team members, and you have to learn how to lead in every single one of those situations to serve all those different goals.
Nice. Corey, what's your take on this, sir?
Yeah, and so for me, I just think that it's all of these things are just titles for people to have, right? Like we go home and we can go it's like Thanksgiving is coming up, and you could be like, man, look, so what do you do again? Oh man, I'm a supervisor for such and such. I'm a manager for whatever. I'm a team lead. Like it's just a title, right? And so the thing we have to realize is that we can walk in the title. And as I said, even in the intro, right? Like I'm a man, I don't need a title to lead, right? But what we want to realize is this is just simply just something, it's a role that you're playing, right? We have to look at these terms as support roles. Whether you're a manager, you're managing a business, you're managing a structure, you're managing the scope of a duty or something like that. All you're doing is playing a role of somebody else that you need to support. You're a supervisor. People say, well, I need to supervise your actions. I need to supervise what you're doing over here. I need to supervise your metrics. Right. All I'm doing is supervising it so that I can support you on how to get better. Like it always comes back to how do we support the person to come better? And it's just roles. There's no man in the ivory tower. There's no woman in the ivory tower. There's no king on the throne, queen on the throne. It's just simply, this is my title. That's cool. But let's even think about it too. When you think about mom, dad, what is that? That's a title. That's leadership, right? When you think about brother, sister, that's a title, but that's leadership, because your big brother might teach you something. Your big sister might teach you something, right? If you're somebody like me, I'm a little brother, I might teach you something, right? So it's just a title. So we just have to understand that these are just some things that look, scratch everything away, take the title, take the job function, I guess, and then say, okay, so what is it really? It's just a support role, right?
Mhm.
There should be really no difference because you're just developing from a different scope.
Nice. So just off of question one, now y'all see why I'm super excited to have both of them on here this evening. All right, let's
And then
jump.
and just to piggyback off what Corey said, I mean, again, we have to remember that we are leaders regardless of what role we play. I always like, even when I go talk to youth, I tell them that leading is inevitable, because just like Corey highlighted, you're a leader in the household. You know, maybe you're a parent.
Hmm.
You might be a big brother, big sister. So we have to realize that the role leader, or that aspect of leadership, comes in so many different realms that we have to do. And the skills and the tools that we learn to execute on that roles are pretty similar. And yes, so there's leadership in role. Yes, you go and you look for a job and they hire you as a leader. But for a lot of us, leadership is something that we will essentially, it's inevitable, because again, we're doing it in our homes, we're doing it for family, we're doing it in mentorship. So leadership
Hmm.
is going to be a skill that you want to really develop regardless of role, or what role you don't choose to be in. It's something that we just have to really, really take serious and learn how to do.
So that's an interesting perspective, and I think it leads us. It's a perfect segue to lead us into our next question. Do you believe that leaders are born or that they're made? Like this is an age old debate. You know, some people say no, I'm a born leader, and then some people say, well, no, I went to school. You know, I took the training and I learned how to become a leader. So, what is your take on it? Do you think that leaders are born or that they're made? And we'll start with
It's
Corey.
oh,
Start with
Corey got
Corey
no,
on this
no,
one.
no.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
No, no. So here's the thing, right? And I love this question. I was just talking about this, right? So I don't think that anybody's born a leader. I don't think that we're just, just God, whatever your faith is, God dropped us on the earth and they were like, you're the leader. I don't
Hmm.
think that, because that would mean that you were predestined to start this position. Because if you think about back in the day, kings and queens were appointed to do what? Lead, right? But they
Hmm.
typically had the money, right? They typically had the status. If you go into like old ages, if you go into like, I was watching Apocalypto, for those of you who've seen that before, right? They had the king and he was like the guy calling the shots. Like that just means that for some reason you were born and you were just like, yep, that's what you're gonna do because that's your purpose, right? I don't
Hmm.
think that anybody's born. I think that people are made and people are forged through the fire on leadership, right? I should just say something earlier. I'm not gonna steal her thunder, but the thing is, even for myself, I remember Shannon, I remember one of these surveys I got back on myself. Basically, everybody was like, cool guy, love to be around him. I'll work for him. All this stuff, all this great stuff.
Hmm.
His environment is phenomenal. He just never holds us accountable. And I was like, God, what do you mean? Like, I shouldn't have to tell
Oh
you how to do
wow.
your job, right? And so that's the thing is like, that I had to learn from that. Okay, cool. Now, boom,
Hmm.
I got an accountability piece. Now I can build on that. So I'm like,
Hmm.
all right, boom. I know that I'm really good at this. I just had to tweak it. Some people go in with the power and the thunder. They're like, I got the power, right? And they just,
Hmm.
you're gonna do this like old football coach style, right? Don't ask questions, don't do none of that. Just do what I told you to do and be quiet about it, right? So there might be some tweaks. I think about Nick Saban. It works for him, but I'm pretty sure he has some people
Yeah,
on his staff that create that environment that people want to be there, if not the championships
definitely,
too.
definitely.
So they're not really born, they're made, right? And for anybody out there, whether it's your communication style, and I'll preface it with this, I think there's only a specific group of people in the world who are just really just socially awkward, and I'll just be honest about it. And they get into
Mm.
situations and you have to lead a group of people, and they're like, y'all know that kid, like that old meme when it's like, when you wish you were like, that's that type of person, right? Like, and it just kind of doesn't come off right. But even you can get training to be able to fix that.
Mhm.
I thoroughly think that if you take everything that's given to you, if you take your past experiences, if you take your future, like where you're trying to go, and then build yourself to be that person, the leadership is gonna come. I don't think there's any doubt about it.
Mhm. Gotcha. All right, Aisha, what you got?
So scientifically, right? Scientifically, what it is that some people are born with natural traits. Some people are just naturally, great of like being like, not want to say thrill seekers, but maybe decision makers. So there are studies that have shown that people have certain attributes that a leader needs. But just like Corey said, although yes, you might have one up because maybe you've had this great decision making skill, you've been able to rationalize since you were young. But essentially, like he said, those skills and those abilities have to be nurtured. You have to develop those. And just like we know that leadership needs to be customized. On our earlier live where we're doing our business and leadership Q&A, we talked about how we need to realize that as leaders, we have to constantly evolve and innovate. We talk about innovation all the time and what we think about products and services, but we don't realize that we have to innovate how we connect. So we were talking about the multi-generational, how you have Gen Zers that are coming into these businesses and these organizations. You have millennials where I fall under. I'm an elder millennial, but I fall under that. But you have all these, I'm an elder millennial, but you
I
have
never heard
all
it
these
put like
different,
that.
I'm an elder in there, because I'm like, Gen X, I'm like there, but then I'm here. But anyway, but what we have to realize is that as we're going into workspaces, as we're going into different rooms, we have to shape how we lead. We have to change that up. So you might go into an organization. I've been in organizations where most of the people have been introverts. We don't have to worry about having little powwows and go out to lunch every week. And I've been in organizations that a lot of them have had to be one of those spaces where you had to interact. And as an introvert, that was hard for me, but I had to shape and mold and switch up how I did things. So yes, you have your basic soft skills. You need to be able to communicate. You need to have the decision-making skills. You need to be able to multitask, but essentially leadership is something that constantly is changing and evolving, and you have to constantly change and evolve. So are leaders born? No. You're born with certain skills. You might have certain attributes that might be effective, but you even have to even sometimes identify when you want to tap into that, when you want to utilize that, when is it the best time to utilize that attribute that you have. So we have to realize that it's something that is consistently developed, and we are constantly being made, as you say.
Yeah, and so look, I got one more thing for that too, though, right? So when
Okay.
you talk about the elder millennial, no, I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna talk about the elder millennial. Um, so when you're talking about your different styles, right? So something that people may not know is like she's like, hey man, I'm an introvert. I don't really like being that. Meanwhile, I'm in a group and I'm like, hey, how's it going? Like,
Uh,
I remember the first time that we ever met, right? We were going through the airport and she was like, how did you just talk to all these people for like, and you just held a conversation with this guy. But the thing is, you have to learn how to leverage that, right?
mhm,
Because there are certain things that Aisha can do that I'm like, that's not me, right? And there's certain
mhm.
things I eat just talking to random strangers while eating lunch or dinner or whatnot, and she's like, I don't even know how you did that, because that's just you have to understand who you are and then be able to leverage that. So the thing is,
Facts.
even as certain people think, well, I'm not an extrovert, I'm not a leader. That's not true, right? It's just how
Mhm.
you build that skill. There are countless successful introvert leaders. There are countless successful extrovert leaders. So it's just how do you build that skill set? So I really liked what you had said about that.
Definitely. And I mean, looking at the comments, I think you're gonna have to hashtag elder millennials.
Listen, come through, elder millennials. Okay, we've been there where it was like, oh yeah, I remember when we didn't have internet, but I remember when we did have internet, like we've been through. So I'm an elder in these millennial streets. I'm saying.
Oh, with you on that one. All right, next up we got what are the essential non-negotiable qualities of a great leader in the workplace? And we'll start with Aisha on this one.
I mean, when you're thinking about non-negotiables, I mean, again, you have to first, again, that's why I'm big on emotional intelligence and really understanding
Hmm.
who you are first. Because as I mentioned, even on the marketer side, for how a lot of people go into leadership and they haven't taken time to analyze and identify who they are. What are your values? Why do you want to be a
Hmm.
leader? We did a series, the Act and Lead team, Corey and Tyrus were a part of, we did this series and we were talking about the CEO of WeWork, or the former CEO, and how he was so driven by money that now it started to affect how the company was run. I mean, you had investors that was investing in the company. I mean, dude was working out at work, walking around with his shirt off, sweating all over people's papers and stuff. He had a jet, he had a Maybach, he fired people and then had a party right after. And it's like, we don't really take time and really analyze and assess why we want to lead. Why do you want to start that business? Is it solely because of money? So it's going to be so important that you identify for yourself what your values are, identify what, what your non-negotiables are, and really figure out if the organization or what you're doing is in alignment. So that's really going to be a self-assessing process. Okay, I know I'm about that bag. But I know if I go to this company here, they're about community, and I don't care about community. And I know that sounds crazy, but some people are solely about the bag. So why would you go work for a community organization when you're really about the bag? So non-negotiables are something that is an individual. I don't want to say what you shouldn't do or what you should do. That's an individual journey. But essentially, when you're going into service, into business, and you want to build a team and you want to connect and be effective, you really want to make sure that you assess your values, why you believe that this is how things should be run, why you believe that this should be how, you process things. And then from there, identify, again, where was this? I always talk about the leadership worldview. Where was your worldview created from? What made you believe that this is what you needed in order for you to look good? Like, why did homeboy think he needed all these things? And really go through that deep dive of self-assessment to figure out, is my worldview accurate? Because what my non-negotiables might be, I might think it's crazy. Like, that's your non-negotiables? I would think that you'll be like, I would never sell myself out, but you don't mind selling yourself out. So I think it is an individual journey that you need to go through to truly identify what your beliefs are, identify what your values are, what your worldview is, figure out why it's that way, and really make sure that when you go into business, it's in alignment with the people and the team and the organization you connect with, because that's where a lot of leaders mess up at. They go into something with one idea, and then they're like, I didn't know that I had to care about you guys, but I do. And because I do, and because I don't care about you guys, everything is going to tank. So really make sure that's something you go through. And again, I can give you specific ones, but that's a journey that you'll have to figure out as a leader on your own, so you can make sure it's effective and it's really going to be beneficial for your business, your brand, or the organization you support to move forward.
Yeah. And man, how do I go after that? No, I'm just playing.
I don't even know.
But so I think the first thing for me, or the first two things really, is transparency. Your level of transparency can vary. I'm a very transparent person when I'm with my team. I'm a very transparent person when I'm around people. The level can change, but if I'm working together with you, if I'm really with you and we rocking together, I'm transparent, right? Like, I'm not one of these people who's just gonna, well, you don't know anything about my life, you don't know anything about my hobbies or anything that I do, because the best way to build a great team, and because you are a leader, is to get buy-in, right? And so people, again, people never buy into to your position or your title or whatnot. People buy into like what you're doing this for, right? And so when they come in and they say, hey, you know what, I want you to be the best person that you can. Or you, like Aisha said, you got some people who's like, let's go get the bag, right? And you got some people, if you are transparent with them and you're like, look, I'm trying to get this bag, man. Other people might come in and be like, well, let's get this bag together, right? Let's figure out how we all get the bag. But there's a level of transparency that you have. And I think that plays into my second piece of authenticity. You have to be who you are all the time. I don't know very many great leaders who are not themselves, and they put this facade up in front of people. And then when they go home, they're like this completely different person, right? You might have some slight tweaks here and there because you don't want to bring that to the workplace. But for the most part, this is who I am. And people buy into that, and people will love you, and people will be ready to run through a wall. People will be ready to do whatever. You could be like, hey, can you go hang that up from the rafters up there? That's not even in your job description. They'll be like, you know what? I got you. Don't worry about that. So transparency, authenticity. And then the third thing, because I agree with everything that Aisha said, is every leader should have some level of accountability and some level to stretch people. If you're not stretching people, I don't know if you're leading people. And the reason I say that is because if I work for you, right, or I'm running a business and I have my team or whatnot, if I'm not pushing you to get better as an individual, if I'm not pushing you to say one day soon you won't work for me, right? And whether that's a promotion within your workplace, whether that's you going and doing your own thing, if you're an entrepreneur or whatnot, you should be pushing people to be like, I hope one day soon that you don't report to me. Because I pushed you to the next level. I pushed you to the promotion. I pushed you to a different department, right? In a good way, like not pushed you because you can't quite get this job function right. But I pushed you, right? So I think those things, transparency, authenticity, and then you need that push, right? Like you need to stretch people.
Definitely, definitely. I mean that question in itself was a TED talk. Like it's so many directions you can go on that because I mean that there's a set of, like you said, non-negotiables that's up in the air. You know, that's a whole different journey that, like you said, depends on you, depends on what you're trying to get out of your leadership position, depends on what the company is trying to get out of you, they're trying to get out of your team. But as far as essential qualities, I think both of you hit it right on the head, and especially with Cora, when you were saying about the transparency and authenticity part, like the people that you lead, they're gonna know who you are, and they're going to know quickly. They're going to know if you're putting on a mask in front of them, and they're going to know if, okay, this is, who this person really is. They do have a vested interest in what we're doing. They do want to see me succeed. They're not just in it for themselves. They are about the team, and they're trying to get this W for everybody. People see right through that. So I think that was a very great point that you brought up.
Yeah, and so just one more thing, right? So it's just you said people see it like immediately. Understand that we are adults, right? Unless you are a team leader of children, that they can't quite function on how to figure out, and really that's like age 12 and younger, maybe 10 and younger now with the way these kids are nowadays, they're gonna see it immediately. And so it made me think about one time I took over this team and they were like, you know what, you're very down to earth. And it's like I can tell that you're being yourself. Man, my last supervisor, I always wonder, like, is his marriage okay? Because there's no way that he goes home and acts like this. And I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
man,
Listen,
ah,
I've had those same assessments like, does your spouse know you like this at work?
there's no, you can't be like this at work.
Uh,
Like, do they know? Because, like, you'll have some people who are whole tyrants and they got family and kids, and you're like, what? Who are these different peoples? You got friends?
Right, people hang around
Housewife?
that. Oh my
Like,
and
God.
who
what's
is this
worse is when you
person?
see them when you're out and about, and then you're like, okay, how do I
Right, he'd
approach
be like,
them? And
that's
then
not
they're all,
you.
hey, how you doing? And it's like, hold on, you don't even say good morning at work.
Right. I think the
Listen.
worst thing that you can ever get as a description to yourself, and I've heard this about many people, great guy, great girl, terrible leader. I think I'm not sure
Mm,
how that correlates with each other. Great guy, I'm not sure why it's not connecting as the leadership aspect.
Definitely,
yep.
definitely. All right, next up, we have, what is the best way for an employee to lead their team without major disruption if the designated leader is actually a manager or a supervisor? So the person that's in charge of the team is only concerned with managing the project, managing the tasks, supervising people's timesheets, but really could care less about morale and motivation. So how does an employee maneuver and keep their team going, keep the morale going, and lead everybody without causing a lot of friction and disruption?
Man, so look, I got the perfect scenario for this, y'all. Like you asking all the questions that I needed today. So look, leadership does, again, it doesn't have a title, right? So you are free to with, and I'll get into this in a second. You are free to lead within your group, right? And to be honest with you, many leaders love when you lead within the group, as long as it's not such a disruption that we're saying, hey, this the goal is to get X. And you're like, no, we're gonna do Y because I said so.
Hmm.
That's when you start to disrupt the workplace, right? That's when you disrupt your team. But here's the thing, you have a lot of people, and I call these people band-aid managers, right? So because they
Hmm.
see the problem, put a band-aid on it, okay, we fixed, we stayed off a list, I approved your time. I'm not really developing you, but I'm making sure that the administrative work is done and you get your paycheck on time, right? And the people that I report to are asking questions, so we must be doing fine, right? And so I had an individual come up to me one time. She said, "I never get coached. I never get developed. When I ask a question, it's like it's as if I'm, irking her nerves right now." And
Hmm.
so I said, "Okay, well, why don't you just rally the team?" And she was like, "Well, that's not my job." And I said, well, let's talk about this. You are directly responsible for the environment that you work in, right? So if you're a leader, if the person mandated with the title isn't doing the thing that you want to do, rally your team around it, right? And no one will ever be mad. No other manager, no director, no vice president, none of your peers will be upset if you say, you know what? You can actually, y'all take this with a grain of salt. You can oust the situation that you're in currently when you say, you know what? In my group, we want to have fun, but we want to be great while we're doing it, right? So we're putting up numbers, we're having fun, we're joking around, we enjoy coming to work now, right? We're getting our job done because ultimately that's what needs to be done. And we're giving this manager, supervisor what they need, right? Which is probably performance and it's probably compliance on what needs to be done. But within that, let's rally the team together because I'm sure that other people are also, in this state of misery. So what you need to do is then take yourself and say, I want to be the change that you want to see, and rally your team around that and get other people bought in. And if your supervisor or your manager or your director, whoever that is, has an issue with it at that point, how crazy is it? And I pose this to a lot of people. How crazy is it if someone approaches you and says, hey, I know y'all are doing your job. Y'all are just kind of having too much fun. If that happens, I think you need to leverage your own talent at that point. But I definitely believe that you have to get the buy-in at other places. And to be honest with you, once you do that, that supervisor will probably just be like, oh yeah, they got it, and continue to do the same thing. And y'all are in the situation you want to be in. So.
And I want to pivot another perspective for it. I think it's also a challenge for you as a supervisor and a manager, because I'm assuming you want to get to that level. I want you to challenge yourself to have a conversation with that leader and identify and saying, this is what the word on the street is. And here are my ideas. These are the things that I want to address. These are the things I want to cover. But having that I call it the riggedy raw conversation, is uncomfortable, but that might be the conversation that you need to have. I've created a culture, and that's the blessing of COVID. Like, COVID has allowed me to self-reflect as a leader. It's challenged me a lot. And I had pivoted into a season because I'm one of those people who will internalize my emotions, but then I wear my emotions on my sleeve. So if I don't like you, I'm gonna be on the call. Like when you talking, everybody laughing, I'm gonna be like, And then the leader's like, Aisha, you can't do it. People are watching you. You're right. So I pivoted to a season where I had to start having more uncomfortable conversations. The first one was the hardest one possible. I had to turn my camera off because I was crying. Like I had all these emotions that I had balled. I'm serious. I internalized. I push that thing down. And when it comes up, and when I get, I'm one of those people who cry when they get mad too. So I'm one of those people. But I had to verbalize it to actually communicate what the issue is. And after I got over that one conversation, now I was able to have a lot more. So if your goal is to essentially get to that level of a leader, this is also a challenge for you. How can you grow in this moment? Corey had some great tools and tips. Okay, you can actually go in and say, listen, well, I'm gonna come up with some strategies and ways to really make the team gel well and create and change this climate. But what are you guys doing to have, like, what kind of conversations are you having? Are you guys having meetings? Are you sharing your ideas? Are you connecting with one another? And then if not, try to have that conversation, because a lot of times, some people are so close to it and they don't even see the other perspective. My supervisor had to tell me, and again, for people who might not know, I'm in the military. So my military leader had to say, I was so ingrained in what was going on, I couldn't see myself from her lens. So she was able to bring in a fresh new perspective and said, Aisha, people are watching you. People look up to you. They da-da-da-da-da. So how you're showing up is not the best way to show up. And I'm like, I didn't even know I was showing up that way, ma'am. Okay, let me backtrack. So that conversation might actually be needed, because now this might be that level of accountability Corey was talking about. Maybe you guys can start creating and gelling and meshing and create a partnership or a leadership type of accountability situation where now you can play on each other's strengths. Now you can say, okay, this is what I noticed. This is how we can play on each other's strengths. Okay, you have some great ideas. Let's launch it. And now you guys are working as a team. And of course, if this is one of those situations where they don't want to hear it, they don't want to they don't want to necessarily pivot and change again, just like Corey said, implement those changes and leverage that opportunity, because now you can have that as an opportunity for you to be highlighted. So when one of my team members say, "Oh man, what you did was so great. Can you put that in an email for me and send that to?" Okay, thank you. Can you? Oh, you bought that? Okay, can you? And again, leverage that opportunity. So now, if that person isn't listening, now maybe the higher ups can start to notice that revenue is going up, clients are happy, and now you will be recognized. But I want you to try in this season to start having those uncomfortable conversations, because you never know if that conversation is is what that person needs, so they can stretch, and then you're also stretching yourself, because now you are going at communication in a very effective way that's going to benefit you in the future as you move up to the different levels of leadership.
Definitely. I think that question is so important because a lot of people, I mean, let's just face it, they feel like the person that's their supervisor or their manager, they're only holding the title. They're not embodying the actual position. And a lot of people feel like, oh, well, I don't want to rock the boat and say anything, or I don't want them to feel like I'm trying to take over. It's not about taking over. Like Corey alluded to earlier, you're on that team, so you're partially responsible for the environment of that team. And like Aisha was saying, forget the whole, I don't want to rock the boat mentality. You have to have that uncomfortable conversation. Like, you owe it to yourself, if anybody, to work in an environment that's productive and that's positive. So why sit there and have this mentality of, oh, well, I don't want my supervisor getting mad, or I don't want them to think I'm trying to steal their position. So what? If you're bettering the team, if you're helping to improve productivity, take that leap, have that conversation, boost that morale, motivate your team. If your supervisor will realize it when your team is all coming to you, and they notice their email isn't jumping, their phone isn't jumping, nobody's stopping past their office, they'll get in line. Because, like Corey was saying earlier, what supervisor is really going to say, oh man, y'all having too much fun, numbers are going too high? It's not
None
going to
of them.
happen. It's not going to happen. And if they do, then you got a whole nother conversation to have.
Yeah.
You know?
And the biggest thing is just understanding that you have to, the three management, I guess, styles or directions you got to go, right? Manage down, manage out, manage up, right? So in this position, it sounds like we're talking about like a line type of position, right? Like an entry level, maybe a couple steps up or whatnot, not really in the leadership position left. Learn how to manage up. And those are some difficult conversations. And I had an individual one time, I coached her through a conversation, how to have it. And her supervisor actually took a step back, thanked her for it. And then actually he took a step down, because he was like, you know what? After I had that conversation, I did some self-reflecting, and yeah, I don't think I'm able at this point to give you what I need to give you. So let me go
Oh
ahead and
wow.
step down, because I don't want to hinder your growth. And that's big. It's pivotal to have these conversations, because like Aisha said, sometimes you're in the thick of it and you can see the trees, but you forget that you're in the forest.
Mm-hmm.
And come with solutions. Come with solutions. We can identify and say, okay, this is what the consensus of the team is. This team has identified that they want to go to lunch every month. They want to have, instead of you meeting with them every 6 months for a
Mm-hmm.
mid-year review and the annual review, they want to have regular check-ins. Okay, so this is the ideas and the plans I'm thinking that could work for both of us, and we can split the time this way. So now you're going in, you're identifying this is the pain points. Okay, now that we've identified the pain points, okay, these are some strategies and some solutions that I found that could potentially work. What do you think? Versus saying, well, I think you should do this. I think you should do this. Bobby and them said you acting
Mm-hmm.
like this. This is what y'all doing. But now you've gone in and you went in strategically. I have this poll. I have this data here. Now, these are some solutions. And now the way you're going to make sure it doesn't look like you're just trying to take over. What do you think? I have some solutions some people recommended. What do you think? I think we can work together and come up with some great ideas. So these are some ideas. So, hey, give me your feedback. And now you guys are working as a team within the
Mm-hmm.
leadership team. So come in with solutions versus just pointing out the issues.
Like that is so key, what you just said, because you have to understand, depending on the mentality of your supervisor, they may get defensive if you just come in there with complaints. But when you take the solution based, strategy with your conversation, it brings their shoulders down, it brings the walls down, no bricks up, and they're like, okay, we can sit here and really look at this. Maybe they didn't understand that things were as bad as they are because they're only focusing on what their job is. Sometimes they need to have the blinders taken off so they can see the full scope of what's going on. You know, so that's very, very vital. All right, next up we have, and I know this is big for Aisha. What is more important, a leader with a high IQ or a high EQ? And
You
Aisha,
know,
we'll
this
start
is
with you on
my
this one.
thing. Okay, so now we're in the realm of emotional intelligence, and for many people, they don't have that level of understanding of. This isn't the language that a lot of us are hearing or learning about, right?
Hmm.
So we have the high IQ aspect. We go to school, we get the certifications, we get the skills, and all these things that we think is going to benefit us in leadership. But what studies have shown is individuals with the higher EQ, the emotional quotient, aka emotional intelligence, actually are more successful. You can have somebody with
Hmm.
a average IQ but high EQ, and they will run circles around that leader that has a master's degree, PhD, all these certifications. Why? Is because they have mastered emotional intelligence. So now there's two aspects of emotional intelligence. You have the aspect that is about you personally, that's self-awareness and self-management. Are you aware who you are? Do you know how you show up? Do you know your strengths, your blind spots? And now that I know my emotions, and again, we need to stop looking at emotions just from the aspect of happy, sad, angry. Under happy, there's
Hmm.
levels to happy. I'll be on a call with the straight face and they're like, what's wrong? I'm fine, right? I'm on a different versus when I'm on a call and I'm cracking
Yeah.
jokes, I'm still fine. So there's different levels of our emotions, but we've learned it from such a basic lens instead of knowing the levels, right? And it's the same thing
Hmm.
for us. There are levels to us. We are driven by emotions on a regular basis. Everything we do is emotional based. I'm giving you all this because I'm passionate. That's an emotion,
Yeah.
right? So, when Corey talks, he's excited with, oh man, I'm so like, there's different emotions that you're going to see even in this conversation, but we are literally driven by emotion. And for many leaders, yeah, sorry guys, I'm excited. You see the passion and emotion. So for many of us, we don't know, we're not aware of I call it the show up. How are you showing up on a regular basis? What
Hmm.
emotional wellness do you have? How can a bad traffic experience make you go into work and now your whole day's messed up? You're mad at everybody just from you being in traffic for 2 hours. So that's where the self-management comes in. I know when I walk into this door, I need to speak. I need to say good morning. I know Betty likes me to have a 2-minute conversation with her. John wants me to shake his hand and ask him how his kid was. So again, it's learning how to manage the different levels of emotions. Now, on the other side, it is now you need to be aware of other people so you can influence their behavior. I know that
Hmm.
when Betty comes in and she's upset, I know that Betty likes, this type of coffee, or I know this is what's going to connect with her. So now how can I make sure that I connect with her, help her pivot from this situation? So now I can influence those good vibes and now she can be more productive. So those are the layers of EQ that you need to know, because we are driven off of emotion. That is the most dominant part of the brain. Even children, when you guys say, were you thinking when you did that? They worked because their emotions are the driver. The
Yeah.
amygdala is the main dominant piece in most children's brains as we're developed. So the practical thinking doesn't really mature until you're in your mid-20s. And if you add someone that's been through trauma like myself, if you've dealt with somebody that's been through some events that's shaken up their lives, that's why you have some adult babies, because they have not
Hmm.
been able to tap into that rationalization part of the brain. So we literally need to have a level of understanding of how to be aware of our emotions, how we show up, how we can influence and pivot that. And again, now we need to also do it as leaders where we understand how people are showing up and how we can influence those behaviors. So EQ is always going to outrun or outbeat IQ because we are driven off of emotions. And once you can master that, even when we make buying decisions, people base off of their marketing off of our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing, a lot of these social media companies are learning about how to manipulate our emotions, because that is the main source of how we move. So now as a leader, if you master EI, your EQ, you get to that next level. Now you can implement that in how you lead, versus just saying, I got a master's degree. Now you can tap into that, and now your leadership style and your leadership level is going to be off the roof. So that's why you need to really start to have an understanding of your EQ versus your IQ, because once you master that, now you are taking your leadership to a whole nother level. Okay, there's my rants.
In her bag.
And and the thing is, we have to understand that we work with we live with, we survive with a people who are not focused on logic, but they are focused on emotion, right? We act off emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you understand that, that gives you your answer. What's more important, IQ or EQ? I was always taught as a kid, you got to get smarter. You got to read these books. You got to bring
Mm-hmm.
in all the knowledge, right? But they told me to do all these things, but in the wrong direction, because they wanted me to read books, because they were like, well, if you're a certain level of smart, right? If you're a certain level of intelligence, but in reality, I think it's 60% of people see more success in the job place if they have a higher emotional intelligence than they do when they
Mm-hmm.
see they have the actual IQ, right? Like, if that doesn't tell you how to pivot and what you need to focus on, I don't know what does. We talked about the bag. We talked about the environment that you want to be in. If you want to be around these types of things, if you want to really get what you want to get, your emotional intelligence, understanding how you need to show up, right? Understanding what motivates you, right? Understanding how to operate in society. I talked about the guy who might be the when you went it went like that. Those are things that he could just work on, right? And then his
Mm-hmm.
emotional intelligence increases. And so what we fail to realize is most of these jobs don't have anything to do with this quote unquote intelligence level that we have. We talk leadership, right? And there's a lot of leaders that I run across, and they say, man, if I could just get more talent, if I could just get smarter people, if I could just get people who can critically think better, right? That's not it, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why they're not critically thinking, because you're probably not tapping into the emotional intelligence, or you haven't assessed what level of emotional intelligence, right? All three of
Mm-hmm.
us on this podcast right now, the people in the comments right now, they're listening to the podcast for a reason, right? We're providing them with some type of knowledge, some type of growth. They go to conferences, right? We go to conferences, we get coaching programs, right? We get all these things to be able to build us up. We read books not to just get knowledge, but we read books to say, okay, how can I operate in these situations? How did that person do this, right? We don't read books just to say, well, another book down. There are some people who do it, but again, that's the wrong direction to go into. And so
Yeah.
Aisha said something about how to show up. We have to understand first and foremost, again, the people of emotion. I used to have an associate every single day will walk in, hey, how's it going? Good morning. How's it going? Every single day. I walked in one morning, I was there early. I was like 45 minutes early. I was in the work. I'm typing along. I'm looking like Kermit. I'm like, let's get it. Right. And so she walks up, and I didn't even realize she was right there, because she sat like down the end of the row. And so the shift started. I'm still working. We had our little power session or whatnot. And she walks up to me and she said, Corey, you okay today? I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm every day, same thing. And she was like all of a sudden, I saw one drop, and I was like, oh boy, here it comes. What's she about to do? And I took the box and I pushed that thing on over to her, because I was like, I don't do crying. And so I said, so what's wrong? Like, talk to me. I said, you need to go out in the section or whatnot. We can talk about it. And she said, well, you didn't tell me good morning when I walked in this morning. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. But it's understanding that you have to know where people are
Yeah.
coming from. She looked forward to that every single morning, right? She looked forward to me telling that to her and acknowledging her. And the thing is, underlyingly, we may not know that could be the highlight of that person's day. That could be
Mm-hmm.
the reason a person comes to work every day. We don't know what they deal with outside of work. For them to have gotten to work, and this particular individual, for her to get to work every single day, it was big for her, right? So for me to acknowledge that from her, that's something that she's like, oh man, I know Corey's about to tell me good morning this morning. I know he's going to acknowledge me. I'm going to feel more valuable, right? And so those are the types of things. So I don't want people to forget about IQ. I want people to not put IQ on a pedestal that it's on right now. I want people to put EQ on a pedestal right now, because if you put EQ on a pedestal, the data itself alone will tell you that you're going to go and get what you need to get.
Definitely. Like, I kind of look at it as IQ will get you the job, but EQ will help you build the career.
Love it.
That's it.
That's good.
Like the both of you hit on such vital points, and I think too, I agree with you also. I think too that people put too much on the IQ part of it. How smart are you? How many degrees can you hang on your office wall? But then nobody likes you. Nobody talks to you. You can't lead people, or you get put in a supervisory, position, and everybody's quitting. We've all seen that person. It's like, dang, they can't never keep people in their section. Like, what in the world is going on here? They're smart. They have, they have this degree. They have this certificate. They've done this training. What's going on? And it's what you both alluded to. Their EQ is in the toilet. They don't know how to talk to people. They don't know how to, be empathetic. They don't know how to address problems in the proper way. It's like they just have this tunnel vision of being a machine. I know me for myself, like what Corey was just talking about with how other staff notice things about you that you don't even notice about yourself. Like the first time I became a supervisor, I had a similar experience. And, it's like maybe 1 or 2 o'clock that afternoon. And one of my staff came to my office. It was like, I just got a question. Did I do something? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we've been here since 5:30 this morning. What in the world are you talking about? Did you do something? Well, I want to know why you mad with me. And I'm like, what are you talking about mad with you? Like, I'm chilling. I'm in a good mood today. But you didn't speak this morning. So I definitely, know where you're coming from with that one, Corey. Like, it's crazy. And I was like, okay, this morning I was running late. I had to do this. I had to do that. I'm trying to get everybody together. I'm supervising 65 people. I'm trying to make sure we get to go and can get up out of here. Didn't even think about it. But any other day, I went and spoke to every single person. That day I didn't, and that person took it personally. And I was like, yo, that's crazy. But in the grand scheme of things, it's the little things like that that matter to your people when you're in a leadership position. Remembering birthdays or telling somebody, hey, we're thinking about you when they had a loss in the family. Show people that you're human, not just that, hey, I have this title, I'm over top of you. I just need you to do your work. Like you said, get your check and go home. Like it's bigger than that. It's so much bigger than that.
And just so you guys know, that doesn't change in COVID. COVID has forced a lot of leaders to lead a lot differently and engage differently because you're in the virtual space. Every morning, I post a good morning in our group chat, and I put like right now we're doing a Halloween theme, right? So I do memes in there and I say good morning. They look forward to that every morning. By you calling and checking and saying, hey, how you doing? How's the family? I know you're home managing work and the kids. How's it going? Doing those checks and balances are also important. So even though we might not be, for some of you all that might not be seeing your team face to face, or maybe you do have a virtual team, you work with some VAs, how many of you all are taking 5 minutes just to talk to them? And again, just like I said, we had talked about it earlier on the other live we did. I always ask a lot of leaders, can you identify 3 things that you know about your team? 3 things. And I'm not talking about, yes, we know your birthday. You can probably look that up. But do you know that so-and-so likes coffee and they like only Starbucks and they only drink like that strawberry venti, whatever that stuff is. I'm trying to drink coffee. But do you know that? Do you know that so-and-so is a single mom and she has 2 twin daughters? Do you know like little, like really intricate things, right? It might not be super detailed, but like those little things, are you paying attention? Do you know at least 3 things? And if the answer is no, that means you're not really studying and connecting with your team effectively. So it all it takes is a group chat. All it takes is, hey, my leadership, we created a chat group for all the female leaders. We all connect once a week and we talk things out about a variety of things. We've also now included our managers and supervisors underneath of us to check in with them because there was one of them that was struggling during COVID. So all those little small things that you can start incorporating even in this virtual space is important too. So create that group chat, call them, ask them how the kids are doing. Oh man, I heard it was picture day today. How did the picture day go? Like little things like that matter. So don't allow engagement to stop just because we are virtual. Find innovative ways, again, leaders are made, right? Now you have to shift and find a new way to engage virtually. And there's so many apps and different ways you can do that. You can even send virtual birthday cards, by the way. I thought that was really cool. I was like, and you can get people to sign the virtual birthday card. I was like, come through. So it's little things like that that matters to some people. I don't care. I don't think it's a big deal, but for people they do. So I need to tap into that as a leader.
And I'm sitting here laughing because the next question was actually, what are some creative ways that you can lead and motivate your team throughout this pandemic with most work being done remotely? A lot of people are struggling right now, because like you said, they don't have that face-to-face interaction. And especially for a lot of people that are like extreme extroverts, they are really going through it right now, having to work remotely. And some people, I've talked to said that their supervisors zooming them to death. Like they want to do 4 or 5 Zooms a day just to be around some people and converse. So Corey, I guess we'll throw this one to you. It says Aisha just took the ball and ran with it, not even knowing that was the next question. So what do you have for this one?
No, I got you. And so before we move on to that, because I got you on that one for sure. Just something last about EQ. There's probably some academics out there listening to this. There's probably some people who are stuck in like academia and they're like, well, I got to get smarter. I got to do this schoolwork, right? And so something that one of my good friends told me, he ended up going to Rice University, which is like they call it the Harvard of the South, right? And so he was in this program where he gets a fellowship with all these other Ivy League schools. And so he said, man, did you know going to these Ivy League schools, and he was getting an MBA at the time. He said, did you know going to Ivy League schools, man, all they do is like party and take trips. And I was like, well, wait, what? And so I'm thinking about that, and I'm like, well, what does that mean? And so spoke to one of his peers one day, and he said, he said the coursework is pretty rigorous, but he said there's a lot of times where we'll go out on a boat. Like we took a trip overseas together as a class. We did these things together. We had this fellowship hall and whatnot. What is that telling you underlying the EQ, right? Because you got to know how to interact in person. And so although you have this coursework, right, the school, the Ivy League school, which typically we put them on a pedestal and say, this is like the top institution that you can go to. Even them, they're like, let's go ahead and work on this EQ underlyingly. But to get to your question about how to lead through the pandemic, right, through virtual learning, or I should say through virtual teams and whatnot. And a lot of, got trainers right now. The trainers have had to pivot from training in person where you can feel the energy of the room, where you can feel all that, to now you got to do it over Zoom, right? You got to do it over WebEx. And so a couple of things, right? If you don't have WebEx Teams, I think it's an amazing tool because you can send on it. You have Skype, no shade to Skype, but you can send, what do they call it? GIFs. You can send that over WebEx Teams. So there's days where I've communicated with my team and it's just GIFs all day, right? And they're just, you shooting one at me, I'll shoot one back at you. You telling me how your mood is, that type of stuff, right? Please do not WebEx, do not Zoom people to death. Because what that underlyingly tells people is, I don't trust you to work from home. Exactly. I don't really think you're doing what you're doing. When in reality, you can't control that. But what you can control is, what is your mood while you're at home, right? So there's certain things that you want to do. We talked about one time, what I used to do is it's called a power hour, right? So we're not in the office. We're not together. We can't feed off each other. We can't feed off each other, joke around. I can't turn around and be like, hey, is it going good today? Right. So let's do power hour. We're all in a WebEx at one point in time. We're just all talking. How'd your day go? And it could be 15 minutes. It could be 10 minutes just to get that feeling of we're together again. Right. So you want to get that camaraderie. Right. So the other piece to this, and I think it's very vital that we touch on this during like not being face to face during a time where we can't touch each other, is I want you to touch the mind of your associates. I want you to touch the mind of your people. And how do you develop them, right? Are you taking the time out of your day to really develop people beyond what they're developing right now? So are you tapping into their emotional intelligence, right? What piece did you identify that maybe y'all can work on together, right? We've talked about on the cipher and all that stuff, the DISC assessment. We talked about the Myers-Briggs. Can you tap into that stuff and have them be, oh, wait a minute. And so you're engaging them without even having to be in front of them. They come back with some work. Man, did you know that I was this type of person? Did you know that I was that? So you can pull them in with different ways without having to be in front of them. So start with the GIF though. You can WebEx Teams. It's impeccable.
Nice.
Those memes work, man. I do them every morning and my team looks forward to it. They're like, my supervisor, my military leader was like, is everything okay? You guys are so quiet just because my meme didn't go through. I didn't even realize it didn't go through. And she's like, what's going on? It's so quiet. I'm just like, oh, it just didn't go through. So it's those little things that matter. Do the check-ins, reach out to people. But just like Corey hit on, like, do you trust your team? And that also, again, there's a level of emotional intelligence. How do they feel? How are they showing up? And then are you assessing the workload? Okay, are things getting done? Are deadlines being met? If they are, then back off a little bit and even recognize for yourself if you are somebody that needs to be on Zoom all the time because you are an extrovert or you just need that attention or you need to drive people in, then don't kill your team because of that need that you have. I really want you to take time and identify where that need comes from. Is it a deeper rooted issue? Because you needed that much face time might be literally a level of personal development that you need to go through versus now you're just remedying it by needing to be around people. We have to realize as leaders, we need time to be alone and self-assess, be self-aware. We need that quiet time. And it's hard for some people, but really identify why is it so hard for you to disconnect? Because again, a lot of times it's a deeper rooted issue that you need to process through. And that might be something you need to invest in a therapist, a coach, somebody to help you navigate that, because maybe there's a bigger story to why you have to be around people so much. And we want to remedy that because again, now it's affecting our leadership. We have to remember our traumas, our pains, our issues, our vices show up in our businesses. It shows up in our leadership. My trust issues showed up in my leadership. All that. My wanted to be in control because I was bullied as a little girl. It came up in my leadership. Like, y'all ain't gonna bully me, so I'm gonna be harder and tougher. All that, I'm serious. All that stuff showed up. So how are you making sure that you're assessing yourself? And again, going through that process of that first phase of emotional intelligence, doing the self-assessment, really understanding yourself, working through that so it doesn't affect how you show up in your business or how you show up as a leader in your organization.
Nice. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break here. You are live once again on the Success is Within Reach podcast. You can follow along with us at www.facebook.com/SIWR podcast. We're taking a quick break from one of our sponsors for this episode, Breakthrough Kings, and we'll be right back. All right, and we are back. All right, so we're going to switch it just a little bit. This next question is, what is your process for creating a healthy company culture? For this one, we'll start with Aisha.
Well, it starts with the beginning phase. Like a lot of companies and organizations and leaders don't take time. Like that first 30 days is so essential because when someone walks into an organization, they know within that first 30 days if they're going to stay or leave. So what is happening? What is your new employee orientation process? Maybe your company doesn't have it. Maybe as a business owner, you don't have it. But that process is going to be so important. So that's going to be the first phase. When that person comes in, that is your first opportunity to get to know them. Are you walking them around? Like even in the military, they have a thing they call a sponsor. So me, I'm about to relocate to the Washington, D.C. area. And they're already like, okay, we already have this person as your sponsor. This is someone that it will meet me at the airport. This is the person that's going to let me know what to expect in DC. What's the weather going to be like? These are the best schools. These are the best spaces. Do you have any questions? So even before I get to the organization, I have somebody I can connect with that prepares me for that transition. When I get there, they're going to be like, hey, what do you need? Do you have questions? Until I get that level of comfortability. But a lot of people come on to work and it's just like, here's your roles and responsibilities. Let's start training right away. So it starts from that first meet and greet. What kind of things are you doing to really build that relationship in the front end? And then don't just stop it there. You want to maintain it and continue that connectivity. We don't want to be leaders and we're only addressing our team members only when it's, again, that 6-month review or that annual review, or when something bad happens. How often are you connecting with them? And if you're building your relationship like that with every single on your team, the culture is going to be healthy. You're going to have that authenticity. You're going to have that trust. You're going to have that company loyalty, because we want to keep people in the organizations. I did a leadership series, a retention series, and I was talking about different reasons why people quit organizations, because statistics say individuals typically quit the leader, not the organization. So they will quit you first. So it's so important that you are building relationships with your team members from the beginning, the middle, in between, even all the way to the end. And if you're building that, then essentially the company culture is going to be healthy. So really take time from the beginning and really maintain that, even as you're moving to different tiers. What are you doing to make sure that relationally you guys have a healthy relationship? What are you doing to make sure there's inclusivity? You're getting feedback and information from different people. You're becoming a door opener. You're hearing the voices of women. You're hearing the voices of African Americans. You're hearing voices of every diverse group in that organization. And all those pieces need to be important. But the first factor of all of those is relationship building. If you can build a relationship, then the rest of that is going to basically be easy to do.
No, and that's good. I think the biggest thing for me is, what's your mission and values? And then are you living by it? Right? Because once you start those mission and values and you start to tell yourself like, okay, this is where I want my company to go. This is where, and here's the thing, your company may have a vision and mission statement. Even as a leader, when you get in there, you want to really dive down and understand what do I want my team to be, right? And so one of the things is, I'm a big Baltimore Ravens fan, right? So I guess I'll meet y'all on the East Coast one of these days. But one of the biggest things is they preach culture, right? They always talk about this is the Ravens way. So the NFL has their own like mantra and what they stand for and all that stuff. But the Baltimore Ravens say this is who we are, right? We're hard nosed, hard working, hard hitting, right? We show up to work every single day. This is what we do. And I think there's a lot of teams out here who we don't show up or we don't put ourselves in place to know like who are we? What are we good at? What are we going to, what are we going to be known for? And so those are the types of things where you start to build that culture, right? So once you figure out and let it be your team figure that out. Say what are the top 3 things we want to be known for, right? And then you can start to embody that. And you can say, you know what, we want to be efficient. We want to have great customer service. And we want to, contact every customer or something like that, right? And so then you start to embody that. And you start to say, you know what, no matter what, we know that we're efficient in doing our job. The customer service, if they come to this section, this is what it's going to sound like, right? And then finally, you got that last piece where it's like, we want to embody this entire thing of who we are. Although, yes, there's mission and values. And the reason I wanted to talk about that was because there's a lot of people who say, well, I guess I just have to do what the company tells me. I guess I just got to do what this person tells me, right? But that's not necessarily true. You yourself, when you're building your team, as long as it aligns with the company's values, right? You can go in there and say, what are we going to be known for, right? The company says this, right? But what are we going to band together and really be known for? What are we in this department to really do? And the thing is once you start to build that culture, it starts to spread, right? Because other teams are like, well, what are we known for? I don't think we're known for anything. So I think that's the best way to do it is like culture, mission, values, like, and then whether you are the person setting the standard for what the overall umbrella is or not, figure out with my team of people, what are we doing? Like, what is the thing that we're doing?
I think one thing that I would add to that too is understand that it all starts and ends with you. When you're setting the culture, don't, just look down. Be willing to come down, get in the trenches, help your people out. When you see that there's a gap, be willing to fill that gap. People absolutely despise a supervisor, manager, leader, whichever title you want to give them, that won't help out. especially when they see everybody struggling. Things like that can destroy your culture very, very quickly. You know, um, Lead by example. Don't just bark out orders and directives. You know, like Corey said, live with what it is that you're projecting to your people. You know, Also, what Aisha was saying, building those relationships, especially when people are brand new to your team, like that's golden. That is absolutely golden. We have to get rid of the old school mentality that you just get OJT, on the job training. Like, you just jump in, I'm gonna sit you at a desk, I'm gonna tell you what you got to do, and I'm out. You just figure it out on your own and learn as you go. Like, nah, that's a quick way to have a vacancy. In today's climate, that is a very quick way to have a vacancy and a high recidivism rate. Like, build those relationships, be willing to train people, be willing to show people that, okay, yes, I hired you to do this job, but I'm gonna show you how to do it, show you how to do it efficiently. And it's okay if you mess up, because guess what, none of us are perfect, and we all gonna get this thing right. you know put that team mentality into all of your people, and your culture is going to run like a well-oiled machine. Most definitely.
And so one of the things, Shannon, I want to tell them is, when you set the precedence for who you are, walk in it, and don't be ashamed for what it is. And so I just want to tell y'all a funny story real quick. So one of the things that I always preach to teams is allow people to be adults, right? Because
Hmm.
I fully believe that the leader is then mirrored. So if the leaders acts childish, if the leader acts like they are this like caretaker of children, guess what? The people are going to act like children, right? And so then you're going
Hmm.
to be like, oh, I got to do everything for them, right? And so I had a situation one time where my whole team, they knew, you're adults. You turn your time in yourself. I'm not doing your time. And this is in a position where some of these supervisors, some of these managers were just inputting the time for you. They weren't, you weren't responsible for doing that type of stuff. And so we get into the situation, payday happened or whatnot. And one of my people, she was kind of new to the team, still there for like a month or two or whatnot. And again, everything I preach is, you are responsible for your career. You're responsible for your pay, your metrics, right? I'm here to support you. And so, me knowing in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, we can get a check cut out soon. If y'all can see where I'm going with this, payday hit, that check was short. And
Uh-huh.
she hit me up and she said, hey, what's going on with my check? I'm short probably about $700. And I was like,
Mm.
my. um,
Wow.
did you check your timesheet? And so she said, yeah, I checked it. It was all filled out. I said, well, just do me a favor. Go ahead and check that again for me. Send me a screenshot. And I'm playing crazy right now. I'm like, just send me a screenshot. I'll send it to HR. I'll make sure I tell them like, yo, y'all messed this girl's timesheet up and whatnot. And then I'll get it kicked over to them. And so she goes in and she was like, oh man, I got like 3 days of pay missing off this. I got 3 days that's not input on this. I was like, oh, I know. And so she's saying this in front of everybody. And like my team turned around and was like, I mean, he said you were grown. You kind of got to be mindful of like your own stuff. So the thing was, obviously, money is very important to people. And I wanted to make sure she got a check. So the check ended up getting issued like the very next day, direct deposit or whatnot. But the thing is like, I walk in, I'm going to treat you like an adult. Therefore, you should act
Hmm.
like an adult. Right. So I'm not going to sit here and hold your hand on should you put your time in. My time is in. Right. I'm getting paid. The other people, their
Facts.
time is in. They getting paid. Right. So clearly the money wasn't that important to you if you forgot to input the time that you worked. And so that's one of the things is like a lot of people will say, this is what I'm about. This is what I talk, and then kind of give on it and be like, but not in this situation. Now, if you're going to say this is who you are, walk that.
Definitely. Now, this next one is a really, really big, I guess, pain point for a lot of leaders in the workplace. Um, how do you overcome generational differences in the workplace? And I see both of y'all start laughing. It's
Because we literally just talked about
I was like,
this.
go ahead
We
and roll the
literally just
leadership
talked
Q&A.
about
Go
it.
ahead and roll that and say it.
exactly right.
I know.
Everybody wants to throw around this word, work ethic, work ethic. Oh, millennials or Gen X or Gen Z or whatever the case, people always talk about work ethic, and it's really not work ethic. It's just trying to overcome generational differences. What you think I'm supposed to be doing for 8 hours is not how I see I'm supposed to do my job for 8 hours. I can listen to Spotify and have my earbuds in while I'm working. I don't need to just sit there and stare at the monitor for 8 hours straight, punch my time card, and go home. So, how do you overcome generational differences in the workplace to gel your team together and have them overcome those barriers?
You want to start?
I'll go ahead and take it because I'm gonna let you take us home on this one.
Okay.
So look, in any single workplace, right? We have to understand the generations, right? And Aisha touched on that earlier, right? So she's the elder millennial, right? But a lot of people in these world, like a lot of people in the workplace will be like, you know what, those darn millennials, they don't work, they don't have a work ethic and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, actually, you're a millennial without you knowing it. So you're saying this without saying, but it comes down to the person, right? So you may have some baby boomers, and I said this earlier. I was like, you might have some baby boomers that look, mama here is the text queen, text God, right? She can Google anything. She got the videos rolling and she can Excel and WebEx and all that stuff together, right? She might have made this backdrop for this podcast right now. But you might have somebody like myself that I'm like, I need somebody to do this background for me. Because this is not my realm, right? But most people would think, oh, he's a millennial, he's more technology savvy, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not that person, right? I'm to a certain level of technology savvy. But that's the thing is, I mean, you can't, number one, you can't judge the generation just for what it is, right? But you can gain insight by knowing what this generation enjoys, right? So if you get yourself a Gen X, they probably like for you to come up and talk to them, right? They want the handshake. They want the person to come up and be face to face, right? If you go to a millennial, you go to a Gen Z, they probably just want you to shoot them a text. And the question for them is this emailable or is this textable? Because otherwise we're wasting time here. And you probably could have just shot me something that I could have rated over. Right.
Exactly.
And so understanding those key factors, right? Understanding how these people interact with each other. And the biggest thing to always building a team is how do you leverage what they know and what they don't know, right? I've had he was a baby boomer at the time. So I've had a baby boomer on my team and I've had millennials on my team. I am a millennial. I have to learn how to guide him, how to interact with him, right? And so that's the thing is he has a certain level of experience. He has a certain level of what he likes and dislikes that me, myself, I might not have that. Somebody else on my team, because I literally had someone who's 21 years old that was on my team, which they're Gen Z, right? So that's the thing. That person was then able to learn, oh, when I'm dealing with this type of person, that's what I need to do, right? And he was like, yep. When I'm dealing with he said, oh, young cat over here, you know, when I'm dealing with that old young cat, you know, I need to be quick with it, right? I don't need to take all this time and I don't want to hand deliver some mail and all this other stuff. I could shoot him an email, I could shoot him a text, you know, and he'll get the point or whatnot. So that's the thing. Understand what generations you have, but then dive down deeper to understand, are they truly part of that? Because like I said, I mean, my mom might be the Google God out here, right? And then I even think about my parents, right? So my old papa, honey, my grandpa, right? He was a farmer. He gonna show up to that field every single day, whether that paycheck comes or not, because that is who I am. And I'm gonna show up. I'm gonna farm. I'm gonna do what I need to do. I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna tell my wife about it. We're gonna eat dinner. I'm gonna get up and do it again, right? Me, myself, or somebody that might be a Gen Z, they're gonna be like, shoot, I showed up. I got paid. How much vacation time do I have? Because I live to, you know what I'm saying? I work so I can live. I don't live so I can work. And so that you see like my dad, my grandpa, they're going to show up and be like, you know what? I'm putting 40 years in here. I'm good. Staring at the screen, no Spotify. I'm good to go. Right. But then you have somebody like myself that I'm like, I've listened to 12 podcasts today while I've been looking at my screen. And so it doesn't take anything away. So we have to take those biases, as Aisha says, right? We have to take those biases away and understand that we're still getting the same work done, right? It's just in a different manner because I need to be stimulated different. But just understand when you deal with generations, one generation or one half of generations live to work, the other half works to live. So.
Yeah, I mean, and we were talking about emotional intelligence earlier. Now we're pivoting to generational intelligence. We have to realize, again, I do a lot of unconscious bias training, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one of the things I like to make people aware of first is What is your unconscious bias? Where did you learn about the world, right? And a lot of times it's either our families, it's media. Media has a lot to do with it. I'm West African. I learned a lot about America from watching TV. All of it wasn't accurate. Watching all them hip hop videos, I was like, ooh, the hood. I'm like nervous.
Oh
Like
man.
this how Black Americans live? That wasn't a fact. And I was watching Family Matters. I assumed this is how family were. So again, a
Oh
lot of
wow.
us have to identify our unconscious bias, our worldview, what's shaping that. And then that also happens when it comes to generations, because just like Corey was saying, you might have an individual that might have experienced, Gen Zers or Gen X in a certain realm, right? And now they're
Mhm.
assuming, or it might have been one interaction, and now they're assuming everybody is this way, and they're assuming this is going to be their experience. And you have to realize first that every generation, their worldview is different because they've experienced life differently. You have one generation that grew up in the Great Depression, and now you have a whole nother generation that's growing up where social media, the internet, everything you can call or like everything is just quick on demand. That's a big gap in different experiences. So their worldview is different. You have a generation that grew up during segregation, and it was fine. Like, you can work here, I can work here, I'm fine with it. Now you have
Mhm.
another generation that's looking for diversity, inclusion. They're looking for a variety of different
Mhm.
individuals within the workplace. So again, we all can learn something from one another, but we also have to understand our differences. So for many of us, we have to unlearn some things and learn the right things. And in order for you to do that, you have to really understand the different dynamics of generation. And again, when we talk about leadership, we have to innovate our leadership and start to tap into these tools, these assessments, these generational IQ or EQ or generational aspects of training, so we can understand the dynamic of the workplace. Because even in the workplace, this is the first time that you've seen so many different generations in the workplace. The CEO might be a whole baby boomer, and you might have a team that goes all the way down to a Gen Z. And Gen Zers are dealing with the level of ageism. See, ageism right now
Mhm.
is defined by like the elderly, 45, typically 50 and up. Well, the definitions and even the things that protects them is typically for those 50 plus year olds. Who's being left behind? The 21-year-olds, the youngins that are going into workplaces that are now being discriminated against because of their age. And they're looking at them like, okay, we already know. And it shows, just like Corey was saying, like, you have a generation that lived to work, and now you have a generation that's working to live. Well, those individuals don't stay in an organization too long because they know their worth. Yes,
Mhm.
grandma and all them used to work their neck, just work all day and then come home complain and say, man, I worked all these hours and this is my check. Well, you have a generation that's saying, I will no longer work in an organization that doesn't allow me to take my vacation. I want work-life balance. I need to have self-care. I need to take care of myself. So that is actually a good thing, but we're judging them based off of it. So for us as leaders, again, how are you innovating your education to have not only emotional intelligence, but also generational intelligence? So you know how to tap into all these different great minds who have different experiences, and know how to have them work as a cohesive network, and know that the Gen Zers are going to bring you that innovation and change that's going to allow your company and your business to thrive. But then also that baby boomer has that knowledge and wisdom that you also need, because they have some tools and information that's going to benefit your business and your company as well. So yes, again, it's going to take a lot of leaders to actually educate themselves, learn about the different generations, learn how to tap into everybody individually versus judging people based off of the biases that have been created because their worldview lacks.
Definitely. Like I remember so vividly my first supervisory position, and just the looks on people's faces when I came in, like, I got kids older than him, how is he coming in here and gonna tell us what to do and all of this. Like it was absolutely crazy. I got 65 staff ranging from 19 all the way up to like 62. I want to say 62, 63. And it was absolutely bananas. Like it took me a good 2 months to really gain their respect and say, you know what? Yeah, I do have kids older than him, and yeah, I am old enough to be his mom or his dad. But this young man knows what he's doing, you know. And it's one of those things. Like I tell people, just keep pressing, keep pressing, keep pressing. Don't get frustrated, because as you've heard, both of our guests say, it's not a personal attack on you. It's just biases that people have. And you can be the most nice, respectful, positive person, but we're human. And to an extent, we all have biases about something or someone. So don't take it personal. If you're in this leadership position, just keep pressing on. Do your job, do a phenomenal job, build those relationships. The ones that give you that pushback, take a little extra time and sit down with them. Let them know where you're coming from and what you're about. Yes, I'm here, not going anywhere. I'm about my business, and we're going to get this thing done and have a true team environment here. And they'll come around, definitely.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
the thing is, just don't judge a generation by its cover. Like
yeah.
that's the don't judge a generation by its cover. There's a there's a situation I saw. As a matter of fact, I was on a plane, and the kid had to be about 15, 16 maybe. My man had a flip phone. So first and foremost, that's what caught my eye. I was like, man, do they still make flip
Wait a
phones?
minute.
I was
Wait
like,
a
wait. And so he had the flip phone, didn't even have a camera on it, right? It just had the little bar with the time on it. But here's the
Oh
killing
man.
part. My man was 15, 16-year-old, right? But then all of a sudden he started doing like with his hands. And I was like, is my man really making shadow puppets on the plane? Like he had the little light flying, and I'm like, my man making a shadow puppet, like he doing the little shadow puppet thing on here. And I was like, yo, somebody is in a rude awakening when they get involved with him, because they're gonna be like, he ain't got no type of technology. But
Oh
again, don't
man.
judge a generation by its cover, because you would look at somebody like that and think that this 15, 16-year-old will run circles around you with tech, right? And so the last thing I'll say on that though is that stop misconstruing efficiency with laziness.
Yeah. Yeah. So this has been absolutely phenomenal. I can't thank both of you enough for coming and joining me on this evening's podcast. I know the three of us, we can go for 3, 4 hours, especially on leadership and management. But before we get out of here, I want to ask, what's next for you? And how are you closing out 2020 and transitioning into 2021? What projects do you have going on? I know you all both have your own series for leadership and coaching. You have a third partner as well, so just let everybody know where they can find you, what you have going on, and what is it that you're doing to transition into this next year.
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest thing right now is y'all just be on the lookout. So we're about to launch our coaching cohort, right? And so if y'all want to be a part, we got about 3 slots left, and so we're gonna take you through everything, right? So we're gonna take you through emotional intelligence, your leadership development, your intelligence development, right? Your how to move in and out situations, how to place people, how to understand yourself. What's your story as a leader, right? We walk into businesses and you would think about, oh man, I'm just a leader. The people who get promoted, the people who really bring themselves to a higher level, they have a story to tell, right? We always hear these CEOs that's like, man, I started off in the mailroom, right? That's a story to tell, right? But a lot of people don't walk in and say, what's going to be my story, right? Am I going to
Hmm.
be the person that one day say, man, I worked through the mailroom and I made it to CEO, I made it to CFO, right? So what story can you tell? And that goes into everything, right? Your presentation skills, right? There's a lot of leaders out here who you get in front of people, you go to present, and you're like, here's the numbers. Okay, bye. You don't really know how to articulate that information, right? So we're gonna walk you through all that, right? So we got about 3 slots left. Y'all can go to actingleadconsulting.com, right? And yeah, so that's how we're closing out the year. Going into this year, we also have before I forget about it, Aisha, on Monday, it's free to the public. The SBDC for University of Texas San Antonio. We're about to drop free game basically on them for their people. So it's free of charge. Y'all go ahead and sign up on it. Um, yeah, and then we're just gonna close it out with the coaching. We got a couple more gigs coming up, but then it's starting the year off strong, because we got a lot of organizational health checks to do. If you have an organization out there, let us do that for free, and let us figure out what what opportunities you have, right? And so I'll let Aisha take it away, because we have a couple more things, but I can keep going.
Yes, yes, and that's true. And the great thing about the 12-week cohort is that there's going to be women in leadership breakout sessions. And again, for all the women leaders out there, those that are trying to navigate business, and of course, we know there's certain biases and things we have to navigate as women. That aspect is within that program. So I'm so excited to connect with women. We love y'all fellas, we do, but our experiences is different. We do. We love y'all, but our experiences are different. For me, I'm a single mother of two, but I've been able to write 3 books, not just 2, Shannon. I wrote 3. Okay, 3.
Hey,
Okay, I
excuse
wrote.
me.
With the fifth one coming soon.
I know, right, right. The next one, what? Elder Millennial, right? Elder Millennial book.
Elder millennial.
But I've been able to write 3 books. I've been able to run a business full time and also run a full time military leadership role. And so it is possible. But again, we have to navigate, and we have to navigate life and experiences and the world differently because of those biases. So I'm really excited about having to be able to have those breakout sessions so we can have those discussions, and all those additional perks are attached to that. So definitely sign up for that. And just like Corey said, the conversation we're having is about the psychology of business communication. And we're going to talk about emotional intelligence in marketing communication. So you can have that understanding of how to connect with your team members. So go to @Act Lead Consult. Again, it's @Act Lead Consult on Facebook, and look in the events tab, and you can sign up there. And again, for me, if you want to grab one of my books, one of them is called, I just released it on my graduation, and I just got a degree, y'all. I was able to do this as a single parent. Come on,
Congrats.
ladies. Come on, single dads. Come on, y'all. It's possible. And I did it with a full-time job. So definitely go grab those books. AishaThomas.org/shop. First one is called The Trendsetting Woman. I talked about the process, like I talked about how I had to heal. I had to go through, really go through some personal development for me to be able to truly walk in purpose. So that's The Trendsetting Woman, 7 Steps to a Redefined Identity. And then I did my second book, Leader Set Trends, and it gives you 5 retention secrets. So it talks about the generational differences. It talks about bias. It talks about even emotional intelligence, and that walks you through how you keep a team. Because again, as business leaders, we want to keep our team members there, but how? And it walks you through that process. It also has a workbook component. So please, AishaThomas.org/shop or @Act Lead Consult, or you can follow me on @Miss Aisha Speaks. Let's connect and let's get you to the next level as we're transitioning into 2021. Don't let COVID stop you at all, because it hasn't stopped me. I'm just saying.
Facts. Once again, I'm your host, Shannon Smith. You can find me at @the_CEO_within on Instagram, or at www.theceowithinyou.com. As always, thank you for joining us on Saturday. This podcast will be uploaded on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Pocket Cast, Breaker, and there's a few more that are coming up this week. Thank you once again to my guests. Definitely going to have you all back on here. Like, follow, share, facebook.com/SIWR podcast. And with that one, we are out.